So good morning, everyone. Again, my name's Caitlin Smith. I work in the international office here at Fanshawe. Right now, I'm helping students like yourselves who are trying to plan their travel to Canada and figure out what they need to do before coming and after coming. And today we're going to be talking about that. We're going to talk about arriving in Canada, everything you need to know about quarantine, arrival services, safety, what's expected. All of that will be covered in today's session. A couple of quick housekeeping items before we get started. Please keep yourselves on mute during the presentation. We don't want any interruptions. You can write into the chat if you have any questions, and we will have time to review those questions at the end of the presentation. But please don't share personal information in the chat. Don't put your student number or your email or anything that you wouldn't want the public to have, because it is a public chat. So general questions, great, but personal information, save that for an email. So we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about planning your arrival, which includes important dates, arrival services, resources. Then we're going to talk about arriving in Canada and what you can expect at the airport and what you have to do right before and right after arrival. And then we'll finish with the quarantine period for students who need to quarantine, what you can expect during those 14 days, what you should be prepared for. So a lot of information, but again, we are recording the session and you will get PDF copies in the chat at the end. So we'll get right into it. We'll start with planning your arrival. So the good news is that Fanshawe is a designated learning institute. So we're a DLI with a recognized COVID readiness plan with the Ontario government. So basically what all of that means is that international students who are coming to study at Fanshawe are allowed to enter the country right now. Even through the pandemic and everything, international students at Fanshawe can travel at the appropriate times into Canada, because we've done a lot of groundwork with the province to make sure that we're following all of the safety rules to help keep students safe and to help keep our community safe. So that's the good news. We do have some important dates to keep in mind. It also, when you're looking at these dates, it really is important to know if you're in a blended program or if you're in an online program. So students in blended programs, you're going to have classes or labs that are taught in person on campus. So for example, the culinary programs, you have to actually come into the kitchen and use the equipment in the kitchen, or practical elements of mechanical engineering is the same thing. You have to go into a lab and use specialized equipment. So those are blended programs. Because you're in person, you can't do a blended program online. You have to physically be in London or at your regional campus to go into the classroom. So blended program students, you do have specific dates that you need to arrive in Canada by. If you're a non-vaccinated student in a blended program, you must arrive by August 22nd, which is coming up, that's next week. But if you're a vaccinated student, you have until September 3rd in a blended program to arrive in Canada. And again, that's because you have to be in Canada with your quarantine finished before the start of classes, because you can't miss that first week of classes. It's all of the safety information. You have to be there for that. So blended program students, you actually have deadlines that you have to arrive in Canada by. Now, most students are studying in online programs this semester. So most students are going to be 100% online. You won't have any classes taught on campus. And online program students, you can travel anytime you want. You can start your studies online from home and travel in October, November, December. There's more flexibility with online programs. So it's really only blended program students that have to be here by specific dates. So keep that in mind. September 7th will be the orientation day. So that's when your program orientation will happen. And September 8th is the start of classes, which is a very exciting day. So we're going to start by talking about quarantine requirements. So right now, non-vaccinated travelers are required to quarantine when they enter Canada, and we'll get into that soon. But basically, for quarantine, the Canadian government sets the quarantine requirements, and you can read their full list of requirements on the website shared here. All non-vaccinated travelers entering Canada must quarantine for 14 days, 2 weeks. And during your quarantine period, you have to remain isolated. So you have to remain in your quarantine accommodations at all times. You're not allowed to go to the grocery store or go out for a walk. You have to stay isolated in your accommodations. Also, you can't have guests or visitors. You can't have people come to you because, again, the idea is that you're staying isolated, that you're not interacting with anyone who did not travel with you. So no visitors during your quarantine period. You also have to monitor yourself. So you want to make sure that you're watching your health, that you're monitoring your health, that you're not developing any symptoms, or if you are, how strong are they? And you'll be receiving daily check-ins, both from Fanshawe and also from the Canadian government. So people will be checking in on you during your quarantine period. What's good is since we've passed the August 9th date, the quarantine requirements have changed slightly in Canada. So students who are not vaccinated and are required to quarantine are no longer required to spend the first 3 days at a government hotel close to the airport. Now you can do your full 14 days of quarantine at one of Fanshawe's partner hotels. You don't have to switch after day 3. So it's good news because it's easier and also it's less expensive. Those government hotels were a little more expensive than our partner hotels. So you get to save a little bit of money. So basically what will happen now, if you're a non-vaccinated traveler, you'll arrive at the airport, let's say the Toronto airport, you'll get a test, a COVID test done at the airport. And then you'll immediately go to your quarantine location, which will be one of Fanshawe's partner hotels. You'll spend the full 14 days of quarantine at that partner hotel. And then once your quarantine is over and your testing is done, you'll be free to finish quarantine and kind of go about your business, start entering the community, go grocery shopping, move into your accommodations, all of that. So that's the general overview of what's expected for quarantine. It is important to remember the rules. When you're in quarantine, again, you're not supposed to leave for any reason except urgent medical care. So you can't go to the grocery store, you can't go for a walk in the park, you have to stay in your quarantine location for those 14 days because you can't interact with anyone who did not travel with you. When we say that you're staying at a partner hotel, hotels will often have amenities like a pool or a gym, but you can't use those spaces while you're in your quarantine period. For the 14 days that you're in quarantine, you can't be using shared spaces like a hotel gym, because again, the idea is that you're staying isolated, that you're staying away from anyone. So using a space that other people are going to be going into, there's risk of contamination and spreading germs and all of that. So during your quarantine period, you're staying in your hotel room, in your hotel suite, you're not leaving. No guests are allowed to come over. You should be cleaning and disinfecting your space as much as possible. So wiping down handles and taps, that sort of thing. And for those rare instances where you do have to interact with someone, make sure that you're wearing a mask, that you're staying 6 feet apart. For example, when you're checking into your hotel, you're wearing a mask, you're staying distanced. So quarantine accommodations, there are very specific requirements on where you are and are not allowed to quarantine. The rules that the government has set up is that you have to have access to basic necessities. So that's things like heat, water, internet. You're not allowed to quarantine with anyone who is considered high risk. So that would be anyone over the age of 65 or anyone with an underlying health condition, like a chronic condition. And you're not allowed to stay in a living environment. I see someone's maybe off mute there. Please keep yourselves on mute. So that means you can't move into an apartment with 3 of your friends who are already living in Canada for your quarantine. After quarantine, absolutely go for it. But during your quarantine period, you have to be able to stay isolated. So for that reason, Fanshawe students do have to quarantine at Fanshawe approved partner hotels. That's the only acceptable place for students who are required to quarantine. So non-vaccinated students, you must quarantine at a Fanshawe partner hotel. Now, Fanshawe has negotiated discounted rates at these hotels. So you're actually getting a cheaper rate for your quarantine period. We have a range of hotel options. So it starts at kind of just like your traditional hotel room, so a bedroom, a bathroom, TV, desk, nothing too fancy, up to apartment style suite. So you would have a little kitchenette, you'd have a little living room area. So there's a range of options to find something that suits you and your needs the best. Some of the hotels offer meal packages. Others will allow you to order in groceries through online delivery and have them brought up to your room. So there's, again, a range of options so that everyone can find something that suits their needs. We have 7 partner hotels in London. We've just added 2 more, and 1 in Mississauga, which is the GTA, the Greater Toronto area, for anyone who wants to stay in Toronto. When we talk about our hotels, you can find them all on the resources list, which I'll put into the chat at the end of the presentation. We also include other resources in that document. So grocery delivery services, for example, just to help you start planning. How are you going to get food? How are you going to get the supplies you need while you're in quarantine? I will give a couple of tips here and say that most grocery, like online ordering services in London, are not necessarily same day. So if you place your order on Monday, you might not get your delivery until Tuesday or even Wednesday. So it is important to plan ahead a little bit and think, okay, if I'm arriving on Monday, I might not get my groceries until Tuesday. What am I going to do for dinner Monday night? Am I going to do Uber Eats? Am I going to get something through room service? What's my plan? So you do need to plan ahead a little bit in that sense. Also, my number 1 tip for students who have to quarantine is to make sure that you're arriving in Canada with a credit card that will work in Canada, or at the very least Canadian dollars, not US dollars, Canadian dollars, because you won't be able to go to a bank until your quarantine is finished. So you need to arrive with a way that you can order food, order groceries, pay for your hotel. And for most services, they're going to want a credit card. Some will take cash, but that will limit your options. So arriving with a credit card that will work in Canada is going to be very, very important to make your quarantine period a little bit easier for you. So the only people who are quarantined are non-vaccinated students. So what happens if you are vaccinated? Well, let's first make sure we all understand what it means to be fully vaccinated in Canada. So to be considered fully vaccinated, you have to have the full series of a vaccine. So most vaccines are 2 shots. So you have to have both shots. It has to be one of the 4 vaccines currently recognized by the Canadian government. So that's the Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, which is also called Covishield, or the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So it has to be one of those 4 vaccines. And you have to receive the last dose at least 14 days before you travel to Canada, because it takes about 14 days for the vaccine to reach full strength in your body. So you need to get that last dose at least 14 days before you arrive in Canada. So again, you have to have both shots. If it's a 2-shot vaccine, it has to be one of the 4 recognized in Canada, and you have to receive your last dose at least 14 days before you travel. You're also going to need to prove all of this. So you need to have some sort of documentation that shows your name, the type of vaccine you received, the date you received it, and that has to be in English or French, which are Canada's official languages, or with a certified translation. So every country in the world right now gives you a different document depending on where you got the vaccine. Some countries even have multiple types of documents. So there's no standard document. You just have to bring whatever you have that shows, I, Caitlin Smith, got the Pfizer shot on June 15th and July 30th, and now I'm arriving in Canada. So you need to bring whatever you've got, but with an English or French certified translation. That part's very important. So vaccinated travelers who are arriving after August 9th, you will need to take a COVID test at least within the 72 hours before you arrive in Canada. So you need to take the test and receive a negative result before you're allowed to board the plane. You still need to have a backup quarantine plan ready. So in case you are randomly selected for testing, or in case your proof of vaccination is rejected for some reason, if it doesn't meet the criteria, you need to have a backup plan of where you're going to go if the border officer tells you to quarantine. And you still need to submit your COVID readiness form in the ArriveCAN app before you travel. And we'll talk about those in a minute. But other than that, vaccinated students are not required to quarantine when they first arrive in Canada. So as long as you meet the requirements to be considered fully vaccinated and the border officer is satisfied with what you've shown them, you will be able to go directly from the airport to your permanent accommodation. So you can move in to your apartment, or you can go stay with your aunt and uncle or a friend. You have more flexibility in that sense. So some common questions: do I have to be vaccinated to travel to Canada? Nope, you don't have to be vaccinated. If you're not vaccinated, you just have to do the quarantine period. So you will have to do the 14 days quarantine at a Fanshawe partner hotel. If you've received a different vaccine, or maybe you've only received the first of 2 shots, then you won't be considered fully vaccinated when you arrive in Canada. So we have some students who are receiving the Sinovac vaccine. Unfortunately, that one's not recognized in Canada. So when you arrive, you won't be considered fully vaccinated. And again, you'll have to quarantine at a Fanshawe partner hotel for 14 days. And do I have to quarantine at a Fanshawe partner hotel? Yes, as a Fanshawe student, you must quarantine at a Fanshawe partner hotel. If you're required to quarantine, so if you're a non-vaccinated student, you must quarantine at a Fanshawe partner hotel. So we do have some resources. We have our self-isolation list, which includes all of the hotels and the food delivery services. All of this information is on the Fanshawe website, and you can also find it on the IRCC, which is the Canadian government website. So again, I'll share the PDFs in the chat once I'm finished the presentation. You can also email Fanshawe Cares or International at Fanshawe, and we can give you those through email as well. So there's a few different ways to get it, but I'll share them at the end of this presentation. So we'll move on to arriving in Canada. So you know what you have to expect when you are going to land. What happens when you're actually in the airport? So right before you come to Canada, about a week before, you do have to submit your COVID readiness form. So your COVID readiness form is how you officially tell Fanshawe, I'm coming to Canada. You'll include your arrival information, so your flight information, the flight number, the date, the time, what city you're flying into, and you'll include your quarantine information, or if you're fully vaccinated, where you're going to go when you arrive in Canada. So you're basically giving us your arrival plan, saying, this is what I'm going to do, this is when I'm planning to come. And it's a very important document. Every student has to submit your COVID readiness form at least 5 days before you travel. Earlier is always better. If you have your flight ticket and you know where you're going to live, you can submit it 2 weeks early. That's fantastic, but it must be at least 5 days before you travel. Otherwise, we can't guarantee that it will be approved before you travel, and that can cause some problems. So at least 5 days before you travel. To submit the form, it's pretty easy. It's an online form. So you just go onto the website, you log in with your Fanshawe username and password, which has been emailed to every student. Again, you're putting in your travel information, your accommodation information, and then you hit submit. So very, very quick, very easy. Should take you 5, maybe 10 minutes tops. When do you have to complete the form? Again, you need to complete the form at least 5 days before you travel, but earlier is always better. If you're a fully vaccinated student and you don't want the free airport shuttle, your uncle is going to pick you up, that's fine. You still have to submit the COVID readiness form. So you still have to submit it even if you don't want the arrival services, because it still needs to be approved before you travel. And some students are maybe still waiting for their visas. You're not sure if you can travel to Canada yet. That's okay, as long as you're in an online program. So students in online programs who are going to start their studies online outside of Canada, you can submit the form and say, I'm not coming to Canada right now. I'm going to start my studies online from home. And then when your visa is approved in October or November, whenever it gets approved, if you want to travel at that time, reach out to us and we'll guide you from there. But if you're going to start your studies online, that's fine. Just submit the form saying, I'm not coming to Canada yet. You also have to submit your ArriveCAN app. So the COVID readiness form is how you submit to Fanshawe and tell Fanshawe that you're coming to Canada. But the ArriveCAN app is how you tell the Canadian government that you're coming to Canada. So it's all the same information that they want. They want to know your flight information. They want to know who you're traveling with, where are you going to live, or where are you going to quarantine? How can we contact you? So very, very similar information. But the ArriveCAN app also allows you to upload your proof of vaccination. So if you're a vaccinated student, you can actually upload digital copies or photos of your vaccine documents. Now, I think someone might be off mute. There we go. Please keep yourselves on mute. There we go. So the ArriveCAN, it is mandatory to submit your information through the ArriveCAN app at least 24 hours before you travel to Canada. My tip with the ArriveCAN app is that make sure whatever you're submitting in the app is your final answer. It's very difficult to change your information after you've hit submit in the ArriveCAN app. You can't submit multiple times or like do a quick edit. So make sure that whatever you're putting in the app is truly what you're going to do when you come to Canada. It's your true plan to save yourself a little bit of hassle. So you only have to submit 24 hours before you travel to Canada. So it really can be one of the last things that you do before you come to Canada. Everyone, vaccinated and non-vaccinated, will be required to show a negative COVID-19 test to enter Canada. So you do have to take a test and get a negative result within the 72 hours before you arrive in Canada. You'll need it to be allowed to board your flight to Canada. You'll need it when you arrive at the airport. So you do have to plan to get that test. In some countries, it's very easy to get a COVID test done and get the result very quickly. In other countries, you might have to plan ahead. You might have to book an appointment and do a little more advanced planning. So that's important to look into wherever you are in the world. I will also add a note here, students who are coming from India, who are coming through a third country, you do need to get that COVID test in the third country. So if you're flying from India to Mexico, Mexico to Canada, you'll need to get a COVID test done in Mexico and receive your negative result before you're allowed to continue your travel to Canada. So that's specifically for students who are traveling from India right now. Just keep that in mind. Documents to bring with you. So there's kind of two categories of documents right now. There are the traditional documents that you would need to enter Canada as an international student even before the pandemic. And then there are additional documents that you need to bring because of the pandemic. So the traditional documents would be things like your passport, your study permit, or your study permit introduction letter, your letter of admission or offer letter from Fanshawe, your bank statements, any of the documents that you submitted when you applied for your study permit, basically is what you would bring traditionally. And then because of the pandemic, you're going to have to bring extra documents as well. So that will include the copy of your approved COVID readiness form, your hotel reservation confirmation, your shuttle information from the airport to your accommodations, your backup quarantine plan if you're fully vaccinated, anything that kind of backs up and supports what you've said in your COVID readiness form and in your ArriveCAN app. So if you've said, I'm going to quarantine at the Quality Suites Hotel in London, great. Bring your hotel reservation that shows, yep, I've got a reservation at the Quality Suites Hotel from this day to this day. You want to show that everything you've said in your arrival plan is true and valid and that you're going to stay with it. COVID test at the airport. So right now, only non-vaccinated students. So if you're arriving non-vaccinated, you will take a COVID test at the airport, at the Toronto airport when you arrive. If you're a vaccinated traveler, they're just doing random testing. So most likely you won't get tested, but there's a chance that you might just be the lucky person in line that they say, hey, you come over here and get tested. So vaccinated travelers are getting tested at random. Non-vaccinated travelers are mandatory tests at the airport. So keep that in mind. You'll do your test at the airport and then you'll go to the shuttle service that Fanshawe provides and either go directly to your quarantine if you're non-vaccinated or go to your accommodations if you are vaccinated. Non-vaccinated travelers will also be given a take-home kit that you do a self-test with on day 8. So you receive that kit at the airport. Again, only if you're non-vaccinated, have to do that day 8 test. If you are vaccinated, you won't have to take that kit. So I just mentioned the arrival services, the shuttles. So Fanshawe does have our arrival services, which include free shuttles from the Toronto airport or the London airport. to your accommodation or your quarantine location. Now, for non-vaccinated students, you're going to your quarantine accommodation, which is one of Fanshawe's partner hotels. So we bring you directly to the hotel. So from the airport to the hotel. And for vaccinated students, we can give you that shuttle, but only if you're coming to London or to one of the regional campuses. So St. Thomas, Woodstock, or Simcoe. We can't provide shuttle services if you're going to go live with your aunt in Kitchener, or if you're going to go visit a friend in Toronto or any other city other than London or one of the regional campuses. So vaccinated students, if you are going to go somewhere else, that's fine, but you have to organize your own transportation at that point. All of our shuttle services right now, they're following very strict protocols to reduce the spread of COVID-19. So limiting how many people can be in each shuttle, everyone has to wear a mask, everyone's as distanced as possible, frequent cleanings between each trip. So there's as many safety measures as we can put into the shuttles. And there's a few different shuttle services we use depending on the circumstances. But just know that it's a free service for you and for any family members traveling with you to make it a little bit easier for you to get from the airport to where you need to be. You request the shuttle service when you submit your COVID readiness form. So again, that form is linked to your shuttle directly. So a quick summary for entering Canada. You must have a quarantine plan prepared and approved by Fanshawe. So that's your COVID readiness form. Everyone has to submit their COVID readiness form before they travel to Canada. You need to present a negative COVID test result from a test taken within 72 hours before your flight departure to Canada. You will get a test at the airport if you're not a vaccinated traveler, and you have to maintain social distancing, wear a mask, follow all of the safety protocol during your travel. So when you're flying, when you're at the airport, and when you're in the shuttle coming to your accommodations. And we'll go into the last section. So for non-vaccinated travelers or anyone who does have to quarantine, what can you expect during your quarantine period? So for those students who do have to quarantine for 14 days, you will be getting people checking in on you. So the government will be checking in on you. They might call you if you get a phone call from this number. It's just a quarantine officer calling you to say, hey, is this Caitlin? Okay, you arrived 3 days ago. You said in the ArriveCAN app that you're going to quarantine at this hotel. Is that where you are? Okay, great. How are you feeling? Okay, great. That's it. They're just calling to verify that whatever you said in the ArriveCAN app is actually what you're doing, that you're following the plan you said you would follow. So you're not in trouble. I know it can be intimidating. You're not in trouble as long as you answer the phone. You just have to answer and say, yep, it's me. Yes, I'm where I said I would be. Yes, I haven't left my quarantine. That's all they want to know. Similarly, an officer might come physically to check on you in person. So they might come and knock on your door and say, hey, we just want to make sure you're here. And again, you're not in trouble. Put on a mask, answer the door, answer their questions. And it should be like a very quick visit, to be honest, just a few moments, because they're just verifying that whatever information you put in the ArriveCAN app is what you're actually doing. So again, it's very important that what you put in the app is true, is what you're going to do. It's your true plan. As long as you can answer the door, answer the phone and say, yes, it's me, then you're not in trouble. And I know it's intimidating. I would be intimidated if suddenly a quarantine officer was knocking on my door, but you're not in trouble. They just want to make sure that you are where you said you would be. If you don't answer the phone or you don't answer the door, that's when problems start, because then they have to question, well, you're supposed to be in quarantine. You're not allowed to leave your quarantine. Where are you? Why didn't you answer the door? Are you breaking the rules? And that's when the questions become a little more serious. So just make sure you can answer the phone, you can answer the door, and it'll be very quick and easy. Fanshawe is also going to be sending you daily check-in emails. So students who need to quarantine do have to submit a daily check-in form online. Takes 1 minute. It's very quick. You're just confirming that you're still in quarantine. And then we'll also be calling you. So we have student ambassadors who are international students here at Fanshawe. They've been here for a couple semesters already, and they are calling students during their quarantine period just to say hi. It's really more of a chance for you to talk to another student, to ask any questions about, life in London or the campus or different student services. You can ask them whatever you want, but it's an opportunity for you to talk to a senior student who understands, who's been through quarantine, who gets what you're feeling, and can maybe offer some advice. Again, the day 8 testing kit. So if you're a non-vaccinated student, you will be given a self-test kit at the airport. And on day 8 during your quarantine, you'll have to give yourself a COVID test. And there's instructions in the kit on how to do that and how to get the test picked up. And it's your final test during your quarantine period. There will be lots of opportunities for you to stay connected. So even though you're in quarantine and you have to stay physically isolated, you can still connect socially online. So things like the Fanshawe Cares series, or we have Fanshawe Works coming up. There's going to be a ton of online events leading up to the start of classes. So you're welcome to join all of those events virtually from your quarantine. And even for students who are arriving maybe later in the semester in September, October, November, there will still be online events happening then, social events through the student union or through the wellness center that you can join virtually while you're in quarantine and attending your classes. You can also reach out to us. So if you're looking for help with your planning your arrival, or if you have questions about your quarantine or your vaccination or whatever, anything to do with planning your trip to Canada, you can email fanshawecares@fanshawec.ca. You can look at the Arrival Services website. All of our information is on the website. And once you're in Canada and you're in quarantine or you finished your quarantine, you can also make virtual appointments with our advisors. So there's lots of different ways to get a hold of us. I will say when you're emailing Fanshawe Cares, it's very busy right now. We're working as fast as we can to help students, but it is taking us 24 to 48 hours, so 1 to 2 days to reply to emails right now. So please just have a little patience with us. We're going to respond as quickly as we can, but we just need a day or two to get back to you right now. So keep that in mind when you're emailing us. So with that, I'm going to stop my share. There we go. And before I start answering questions, I'm just going to put some of the documents that I've promised into the chat for everyone. So let's do that first. Oops. Bear with me. And we've got about half an hour still to go through questions. So definitely, if you have questions, this is a very good time to start thinking of them. So the first thing that I'm putting in is our resources list. So all of the hotels, all of the grocery delivery services, that will be the first document that you see. And now I'm putting in a copy of today's presentation. So if you wanted any of the links or any of the information, you can use the PDF of the presentation as a reference. If you're joining us on like your cell phone, Zoom through the cell phone, you might not be able to download the documents. Send us an email, we'll give it to you that way. So I'm just going to scroll up to the top of the questions and we'll start going through questions here. So first question, I'm traveling with my wife who's eligible for a work permit. Do we need IRCC written authorization for traveling to Canada? So I'm not an immigration consultant. I'm not trained. I don't have my license in that. So I'm not going to answer this question because I don't want to give you the wrong question, or sorry, the wrong answer. What I will say is you should email immigration@Fanshawe, like college, fanshawec.ca, with your student number and with your question, and they can give you the best advice on that. That's our trained immigration consultants. They'll be able to answer that question for you. Is everyone still being tested at the airport? So only non-vaccinated travelers are being tested consistently. So if you're not vaccinated and you arrive in Canada, you will have to take a COVID test at the airport. Definitely 100% that will happen. If you are vaccinated, so if you're fully vaccinated when you arrive, you might take a test, you might not. It's random testing of vaccinated travelers. So if you're arriving fully vaccinated, it's kind of luck of the draw if you get tested or not. There's no guarantee. My visa application is still in process. My course is 100% online. I'm planning to study online for a week or two outside of Canada and then fly to Canada in mid-September. Will Fanshawe still offer transportation? Yep, Yeah, absolutely. Our arrival services are going to continue as long as students are arriving. We don't have an end date right now. We know that with the pandemic, visa approvals are getting delayed and things are slower around the world. So you can't necessarily arrive in time for the start of classes. As long as you're in an online program, that's totally okay. You can start your studies online outside of Canada. Just submit your COVID form saying that you're not coming, you're starting online. And then once you get your visa approval, make sure that you contact us before you book a flight, because there might be changes in the quarantine rules. There might be new information that you should be aware of. So we'll give you an update at that time of what you need to do before you come to Canada, and we'll help you plan your arrival and give you the shuttle and help you book the partner hotel, whatever you need at that time. I'm confused about the quarantine finish day. If I arrive on the 21st, what day can I start working freely? So your quarantine is 14 days. If you're a non-vaccinated traveler and you arrive in Canada, you have to quarantine for 14 days. Day 1 of your quarantine is the day you arrive. It doesn't matter what time of day you arrive, that's day 1. So if you arrive at 11 a.m., day 1. If you arrive at 11 p.m., still day 1. Just a shorter day. So count from the day you arrive, and you've got to stay in quarantine for 14 days. On the 15th day, you're free to go. I recently read an article that Canada issue vaccine mandate for air travel. I haven't read that article. I haven't seen a news or any official policy that requires travelers to be vaccinated to enter Canada. What I can say is right now, non-vaccinated travelers can enter Canada. You just need to quarantine, and you still need to be what's considered an essential traveler. So tourists, for example, can't come to Canada right now. You can't just come to be on a tourist visa. But international students who have approved study permits, who are coming to study at designated learning institutes like Fanshawe, you are considered essential travelers. So you can enter Canada even if you're not vaccinated at the appropriate time, so close to the start of your studies. You just have to quarantine. You have to plan for that quarantine period. My COVID readiness form was approved, but doesn't have any information about the transportation from Toronto to London. How do I book that transportation? So that's a great question. So when you submit your COVID readiness form and it gets approved, that automatically triggers us to start to organize your shuttle. So as long as you're coming to London or one of the regional campuses, you will get a shuttle from the airport to your accommodation or to your quarantine location. You'll receive an email with your shuttle confirmation a few days before you travel. So usually about 4 or 5 days before you travel. And again, that shuttle is free. It's direct from the airport to your accommodations in London or one of the regional campuses. All you need to do to request that shuttle is submit your COVID readiness form. That's it. You don't have to do anything else. Just submit the form. You'll get an email from us saying, great, your form is approved. You're going to get an email with your shuttle information later. That's all you need. Does college provide us with free COVID test at the airport, or should we pay for it? So if you are required to get a COVID test done at the airport, it is free. You're not paying for it at the Toronto airport, but it's not Fanshawe giving you that test. It's through the Canadian government. So yes, if you are required to get a test at the airport, there is no charge. Can I include my hotel contact number in the COVID readiness form for the call during the 14-day quarantine? You can, yeah, you can include your hotel phone number. You can also include your WhatsApp number. If you have WhatsApp, we can call you that way as well, so that it's more direct. For ArriveCAN, is it possible to use local contact number? Yes, I don't quite understand that question. You should use the phone number that you're going to answer. So don't put down your friend's phone number who's staying in another house, or don't put down your cousin's phone number. It has to be a number where they can reach you directly. So they want to be able to talk to you. So whether that's your hotel phone number, or if you're staying at an uncle's house, his phone number, you have to be able to answer the phone and speak to the agent. When should I complete the ArriveCAN app? So the ArriveCAN app needs to be submitted at least 24 hours before you come to Canada. So it really can be one of the last things you do before you get on the plane to Canada, because again, you need the information that you submit to be accurate. It's difficult to change after you hit submit. So it's one of the last things you'll do before you come, but at least 24 hours before you arrive in Canada. I still don't have my visa to enter Canada. What should I do? So that's a good question. There are definitely students who are still waiting for their visas. If you're in an online program and you've already applied for your visa, then you can start your studies online while you wait for your visa approval. So you can start your studies online from home and wait for that visa approval to come in. If you're in a blended program though, so if you're in a blended program and you're going to have some classes taught in person on campus, unfortunately, that's not an option because you have to physically be in Canada. So students in blended programs who don't have their visa in time will have to defer their program start. So you'll have to defer to the next available semester. You won't be able to start online and come to Canada later this term. I've already got my second shot of my vaccine, but my visa application is still in process. Will I be considered non-vaccinated? So your vaccine and vaccination status is not connected to your visa. So as long as you've got your second shot of your vaccine, it's one of those 4 vaccines recognized in Canada. So Moderna, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Covishield, or the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and then you will be considered vaccinated. It's fine that you don't have your visa yet. Once you get your visa and you travel, you'll be considered vaccinated in that sense, as long as you meet those conditions. I'm fully vaccinated. So what should I write in my quarantine backup plan? That's a good question. So fully vaccinated travelers, you do have to come with a backup quarantine plan just in case. So in case you are randomly selected to get a test at the airport and told to quarantine, or in case your proof of vaccination is rejected by the border officer for whatever reason. So you do need to have a backup quarantine plan ready, even if you're fully vaccinated. Now, the backup quarantine plans are a little more flexible because they're just a backup. Most likely, you're not going to have to use them. What I am going to do is we have a template that helps students create their backup plans, basically. So I'm just going to share that document into the chat now. But depending on where you're planning to live, that could be your backup quarantine plan. So for example, if your plan is to come to Canada and go live with an aunt and uncle because they have a basement apartment, then your backup quarantine plan can be, well, I'll just quarantine in the apartment and make sure that I'm staying away from, the common areas of the house. That would be fine. But if you're going to go live with 5 roommates in a 3-bedroom house, then your backup quarantine plan can't be to go to that house because there's no way you'd be able to isolate with that many people in that small a space. So in that case, your backup quarantine plan might be, oh, I'm going to go to this hotel. So you do have to have that plan ready just in case you're told to quarantine before you come when you arrive in Toronto. If you have questions about what's appropriate and what's not, you can send us an email. But again, that's for fully vaccinated students. If you are not vaccinated and you know you're going to have to quarantine for sure before you arrive in Canada, you must quarantine at a Fanshawe partner hotel. So that's a very big distinction between vaccinated and not vaccinated students. Not vaccinated students, you know that you're going to have to quarantine when you come to Canada. That's already a given. So you must quarantine at a Fanshawe partner hotel. I'm traveling with my wife and son. My son is not vaccinated. So will we have to quarantine? So that's a good question. I know there are definitely students arriving with families and with children. Right now, children under the age of 12 are exempt from having to quarantine. So even if you're not vaccinated, or your children, sorry, are not vaccinated and they're under 12, they won't have to quarantine or do the day 8 test or anything like that. Children 13 to 17, they do have to quarantine. So if you, the student, and any other adult family members, as long as all of the adults are fully vaccinated, we are allowing teenagers to quarantine at their house with their family. You don't have to do it at a partner hotel. but it has to be you, the student, and any other adults have to be fully vaccinated. If your spouse isn't fully vaccinated, or if you aren't fully vaccinated, then your family must quarantine at a partner hotel. So that's kind of the distinction that we've made. If you're not sure where you should be quarantining, contact us, send us an email and tell us your situation. We'll give you the specific instructions for your circumstances. One of our students is not vaccinated. She's planning to live in residence. Can she quarantine in residence? It depends. So students who are living in residence for the year may be able to quarantine in residence, but it really depends on your arrival date, because if you're arriving in September or even at the end of August, you won't be able to quarantine in residence because your roommates are going to arrive and they're going to be sharing the space while you're still in quarantine, and that's not allowed. So students who are living in residence, depending on your arrival date, you may have to quarantine at a Fanshawe partner hotel before you can move into residence. Most likely anyone arriving and planning to go to residence who haven't already been approved for quarantine in residence will not be approved. They've run out of rooms for quarantine at this point. So if you're planning to live in residence, you're most likely going to have to quarantine at a Fanshawe partner hotel before you move into the campus residence building. Is travel support letter and enrollment letter mandatory while arriving in Canada? So this is a good question. So Fanshawe is not issuing travel support letters. There is a difference. Sorry, I'm going to start that sentence over. Fanshawe is not issuing travel support letters. Instead, Fanshawe students need to use their approved COVID readiness form. So your approved COVID readiness form shows your travel plans, and it also shows Fanshawe's approval of those plans. So you use your approved COVID readiness form instead of or in place of a travel support letter. That's what you get from Fanshawe, is your approved COVID readiness form. Your enrollment letter is also a little tricky, because if you're a new student who are starting your program in September, you can't have a verification of enrollment, because the verification of enrollment just says that you're studying in the current semester. The current semester is the summer semester. So if you're starting your studies in fall, the verification of enrollment doesn't apply to you. Instead, you would bring your letter of admission, because that shows you've been admitted to Fanshawe to start your program in September. So it kind of depends on what level of study you're in, and if it's your first semester or your second semester, what document you would need to bring. But if you're not sure on what you should have, again, you can reach out and email us. We will guide you on the documents you need, or your agent can actually also advise you on what's required. If the COVID test is positive in the airport, can I cover it with student insurance? So the test itself doesn't have a cost, so you don't need to pay. The insurance doesn't need to pay. If you're talking about your quarantine expenses, no, insurance does not cover your quarantine. You are responsible for your quarantine costs, or your hotel costs. But if you are hospitalized, then the insurance covers your medical costs. So COVID is included under your insurance through Fanshawe. So if you do get sick and you have to go to the hospital, then the insurance will cover your medical costs, but not your quarantine costs. You have to pay for your quarantine hotel. Just looking for a question that we have not answered yet. Can we Airbnb for some time? Ziggy, that depends on your vaccination status. So if you are fully vaccinated and you're coming to Canada and you don't have your permanent housing organized yet, you still want to go look at some apartments, then yeah, an Airbnb is a great idea for you to stay for a week or two while you maybe find your permanent housing option here in London. But if you're non-vaccinated, if you're arriving as a non-vaccinated student, you must quarantine at a Fanshawe partner hotel. You cannot quarantine at an Airbnb or with a friend or family member. The only option for quarantine for non-vaccinated students is at a Fanshawe partner hotel. I filled out the COVID readiness form yesterday. Will the shuttle be ready for my arrival on Friday? So that is very quick turnaround. That's less than 5 days for the student who filled that out. So I can't guarantee that your shuttle will be ready. Right now, it can take up to 5 days for your COVID readiness form to be approved and for your shuttle to be booked. So you really have to follow that deadline. It's very important that you submit your COVID readiness form at least 5 days before you travel to Canada, because we need that time to make sure that your plan is appropriate, to approve it, and then to organize your shuttle from the airport to your accommodation. It's not an automatic process. It's someone physically doing that. So please, please, please follow the guidelines and make sure that you're submitting at least 5 days before you travel to Canada. Otherwise, we can't guarantee, and you might have some problems that way. So to the student who asked that question, you'll get an email from us when your shuttle is ready, but you're going to have to be patient and see if it gets approved. Probably it will get approved in time. We're working very hard and working very fast, but you have submitted it with less time than required. So again, students who are asking to see this presentation, it's being recorded, including the question period. So you will be able to watch this recording on the Fanshawe International YouTube channel. If you want to hear any of the presentation again or get the information again, that will probably be uploaded in the next day or two. You can email fanshawecares@fanshawec.ca for copies of our resource document or a PDF of the presentation. We're happy to give that to you. We're here to support you however you need it. So we'll get you the information as best we can. How to contact an immigration expert. So I'll put that in the chat. It's immigration@fanshawec.ca. Whenever you're emailing Fanshawe, whether it's Fanshawe Cares or immigration or your teacher, my good tip is to always include your student number in the email, because that's the first thing you're going to be asked for. What's your student number? We want to look at your file. We want to look at your case, make sure we've got the right student. So always include your student number when you're emailing anyone at the college. That's going to make your life a little bit easier and get responses a little bit quicker. Does ArriveCAN require the negative test result information? Sam, that's a good question. I think you mean that negative result within 72 hours before your arrival to Canada. I honestly don't know if ArriveCAN asks for that or not. You can start to submit your ArriveCAN and see if you get asked for that. I know it will ask for a proof of vaccination if you say you're vaccinated, but I'm not sure if you upload your negative results in ArriveCAN or not, or if you just need to have that when you arrive to show the border officer. So I'm not sure how to answer that, sorry. I'm expected to travel tomorrow and have not yet received my COVID-19 results. Will it be too late to upload on the ArriveCAN app? So again, you must submit your ArriveCAN at least 24 hours before you come to Canada. So that's the rule. It has to be submitted 24 hours before you come to Canada. So make sure you're submitting 24 hours before you come to Canada for the ArriveCAN app. Your COVID readiness form to Fanshawe is due 5 days before you travel to Canada. So you have to do your COVID readiness form earlier than the ArriveCAN app. Since we won't have mobile plans upon arrival in Canada, how will the transport service contact us? So the transport service might not contact you, you have to contact them. So Fanshawe in your shuttle confirmation email will include how to contact your driver, whether that's where to meet them in the airport or give you their WhatsApp number or the WhatsApp number that you can call. So as long as you have WhatsApp on your phone, there's free Wi-Fi in the Toronto airport. So you'll be able to connect with the driver or even call the emergency arrival phone number on WhatsApp if you need to talk to someone. Or you'll be given instructions on where to meet the driver. So for example, the Robert Q shuttles, there's desks, there's the Robert Q check-in desk in each of the terminals. So you'll be told, go there, meet your driver there. It's not that you have to contact them when you land, you just go to the check-in desk. So again, in that email, your shuttle confirmation email, all of those instructions will be provided. Oh, we have someone here that says ArriveCAN does ask for your test result. So that test result that you have to get within 72 hours before your arrival or flight departure to Canada. So make sure that you're scheduling that test appropriately and that you've booked it ahead of time so that it's not a big scramble at the end. If you're traveling with family members, you put your information into ArriveCAN as a family. So it gives you the opportunity to say, are you traveling with anyone? And you can say, yes, this is my wife, this is my kid, this is my other kid, and you can submit all at once in ArriveCAN. You don't have to do 4 separate submissions. A student who's saying, I prefer to rent a car to go to London. How can I let you know that I will not need the shuttle? So I want to make a distinction here between vaccinated and non-vaccinated students. Non-vaccinated students must use the shuttle service through Fanshawe because you are in quarantine. You have to stay in isolation, go directly from the airport to your partner hotel where you will quarantine for 14 days. So non-vaccinated students don't have an option. You're going to use Fanshawe's arrival services because it's the safest way that's following all of the quarantine rules to get you to the partner hotel. If you're a vaccinated student, then you have a little more flexibility because you don't have to go into quarantine, you don't have to isolate. So if you are a vaccinated student, then there is an option in the COVID readiness form now to say, I don't want the shuttle. My mom's going to pick me up, or my friend's going to pick me up, or I'm going to rent a car, or I'm taking the train to Ottawa. Whatever you're doing, if you're a vaccinated student, there is a little button in the form you can click that says, I don't need arrival services. I've got my own plans, and that's fine. You can also email us and say, hey, I've submitted my form. I don't need arrival services. This is my plan. I'm good. So vaccinated students have that flexibility. Non-vaccinated students, you don't. You have to use Fanshawe's services because you have to make sure that you're staying isolated and following all of the quarantine rules to get from the airport to your quarantine location. So there's always a bit of a distinction. There's always going to be different answers for vaccinated versus non-vaccinated students because your quarantine requirements and your arrival requirements differ considerably depending on your vaccination status. So that is an important thing to remember. You have to keep in mind your vaccination status. Now with that, I am going to wrap up our presentation today because we do have Fanshawe Cares starting in just a few minutes. Thank you everyone who joined today. It was good questions, so I can see some really good planning going on with all of our students. Again, we are going to upload this recording to the Fanshawe International YouTube channel. You can email us, you can email your regional recruiter, you can email your agent. All of these people are here to help you plan your arrival to make sure that you can arrive smoothly and safely to Canada, or start your studies online if that's what you prefer to do. We're here to support you in whatever path is best for you at this time. We will be doing more sessions where the session is repeating again next week. So don't worry if you want to see it again, you will have the option again. And with that, I'm going to say the end. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.